Welcome back to the Michigan Business Beat, brought to you on the Michigan Business Network, and we are at the Policy Conference on Mackinac Island. I'm Chris Holman, and we are still here figuring out what's actually going on. It's crazy, isn't it?
A lot of good things to talk about.
Renee Tabben from Bank of America. Let's talk about that, and let's start with the value of being here, because there's a tremendous lineup of speakers. There's all these things going on formally. Sometimes it's that networking that gets a lot done.
That's right. We are so fortunate to have tremendous leaders across the state, and we've got great relationships with them, but nothing takes the place of that personal human interaction. And one of the things that this conference has always been meaningful to us at Bank of America has been that opportunity to sit down, have a cup of coffee, catch up on the porch, and connect with one another to really work together.
Yeah. Well, in the sidebars that you can really do on an almost more personal basis sometimes. Okay, so when you come from here, besides that, what are the takeaways? I mean, why does Bank of America participate here?
There's lots of different ways that we participate here. I think first, going back to your original question, we have these relationships back in our individual neighborhoods and communities, and we all have our own agendas. But this really kind of kicks off the next season of working together. So when I go back to Grand Rapids or across the state of Michigan, I'm thinking about our key partners in the community: economic development, affordable housing, creating great health care, talking about ways that we're going to spur economic development in a way that we at Bank of America can bring either our financial capabilities or our intellectual capital.
You do a lot of work with your customers to help enhance their opportunities, their success, etc. Go into that a little bit.
Sure. We like to say that regardless of your stage of life or regardless of your stage of wealth, that we have someone at our company that can serve you. And so that's whether you're an individual or a company. And one thing that we take a lot of pride in is the time we spend with individuals and companies to understand what they're about and what they're trying to achieve. And so when I think about that for an individual, it could be someone like my son, who's going to be turning 15 this year, and he needs to learn some good money habits. We need to teach him how to think about building wealth for the long term. If you're a company, maybe you're ready for the next stage of growth, or maybe you're at a stage of life where you're ready to think about exiting and creating some liquidity. I'm really proud to say that we've got great colleagues across the state, over 2,000, that are there to have that conversation and understand what they need next.
Renee, it's kind of interesting because I want to talk a little bit about banking right now and some of the crazy issues that are happening to banks with the feds moving up and down, and this sort of a thing. Does that cause much instability?
What I would say is we are very fortunate to have a tremendous institutional research team, globally recognized as one of the best. And that dialogue that we can have on a day-to-day basis helps us to understand how to respond for that individual client. So, for example, just yesterday, I was on the phone with Ethan Harris, who is the head of our U.S. economy group. And, understanding what we anticipate the Fed to be doing, understanding how we think that's going to affect their business, that allows us to really apply something very specific as opposed to a broad brush.
So what are your customers confronting right now? What are their biggest issues?
Well, when I think about individuals, right, as opposed to companies, I think a lot of people are wondering what's next, right? They're feeling pretty good about maybe their job situation. We know that consumers have a lot of cash on hand coming out of the last 2 years. And so they're anticipating what's next, whether that's inflation, whether that's buying power. I happen to work in a line of business that deals with a lot of individuals considering retirement. And what does retirement really look like these days, right? So I think it comes back to everyone's individual story and understanding what resources they have to work with to help them get the most of what they want.
There's an actuarial piece to this because you mentioned retirement. I think a lot of people get there and realize it's not the prize they thought it was going to be.
That's right. That's right. Life in retirement is a whole different ballgame than maybe what we thought or what we had our parents experience. And so it leads to a lot of really good conversations about understanding what do you want to achieve in retirement? Do you fully feel prepared and comfortable for the healthcare needs that you might have in retirement. And then there's the more fun stuff, like what do you want to do, right? We all expect to be living much longer in retirement than we ever did before, and I don't think we're all going to sit around. I think we're going to get up and go do some fun stuff.
Well, and we don't want to run out of money during that period.
That's right. And, I think that's the thing that you don't know. You don't know how long you're going to need that money to last, and you don't know what all you're going to need to prepare for. So one of the things that we do is we do prepare in advance to talk about any anticipated shocks to that overall spending plan. You create a budget years in advance of retirement so that you can be fully prepared for what you want to achieve.
It's interesting because we do a future business index every 6 months, and sponsored by Sinair. And one of the problems we see, number 2 issue, is inflation.
Yes.
And so that's a tough thing to anticipate also.
It is. I think inflation's kind of skipped a generation, and I think about this next group of investors and people who are trying to establish their wealth habits, being prepared for that. It is one of the dragons that you always want to be thinking about slaying, and I think that comes down to good planning.
You're absolutely right. So in the industry, let's just look at the trends. There was a period of heavy consolidation at one point. But what do you see in the future?
For banking specifically? One thing I would say is that we're very fortunate in the state of Michigan to have a strong ecosystem of banks. We need all kinds of banks. I enjoy being part of a large global organization, but we need community banks, we need credit unions, we need small regionals. And I think that as long as the industry continues to focus on serving that client where they're at, thinking about how they're going to engage digitally, how are they going to get that client to consume their services in a new and different way. That's where we're headed.
Well, I know you know more about where I'm headed than I do, so thanks for sharing a little bit. Renee Tabben from Bank of America, and I'm Chris Holman. You've been watching the Michigan Business Beat on the Michigan Business Network. We'll be right back from the Policy Conference in a minute.